I say so because we're going to say something in our notes about the declining non-racial character of our party. And she represents to us one of those capture commission. Among the witnesses, there was a man called Agrizi. You remember him? Yeah, everyone who was mentioned by Agrizi was in trouble. But Agrizi once said to the commissioner, finished it off. But the difficulty to penetrate one woman. And this was a woman called Miss Jenny Schreiner. And what we have done, the impact over many years of refusing many flirtations and things that they offered in different ways, cadres of the party against any form of corruption. Let me greet also our provincial leaders. We've got several provincial secretaries here. I've seen this from the Western Cape, Comrade Benson Nesu, and Comrade Zotani from the Eastern Cape, who's here. And I must say, Comrade Zotwa, I haven't seen you in person until at this Congress. We continue to get stronger. And so all our leaders that are here that I may not have recognized from the Communist Party in provinces, as well as our national administrative team, led by our national leadership of the Alliance, Kosatu, First Deputy President, and President of Nehau, the fighting shop steward, fellow fighter Mike Shingange. Ow, 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 ow. Oops. We say, look, historically in this country for some time, this has been the situation. And I think you are clarifying this thing quite well. And me and him used to discuss this analogy of a boxing match. And when we boxing well, they cheer us on. But when capital hit us bad and we go against the canvas, but sure, yenzani part. They don't understand this class struggle, it's a battle. So they cheer us only when we are doing well. Now, you know when the opposition has just scored a goal. So this is what we are expecting going forward, that the class must understand its player and not only cheer it when it is doing well, even when there are difficulties, so that it can gain strength and support. So we appreciate that from COSAT that I've introduced are members of the Central Committee of the South African Communist Party in their own right. So they are not just leaders of other organizations. They are also members of our Central Committee in their own right. We appreciate this. This is very, very important. Introduce someone at the back, somewhere there. Ariad, how fund the Young Communist League? But comrades, the leadership of National Congress, the leadership of the Progressive Youth Alliance, of course, SASCO, I hope they've joined us this morning. Yesterday I left before they could join us. There were apologies, they were still coming, and the ANC Youth League. And I've seen the national chairperson of COSATU Young Workers Forum, Comrade Young Workers, spoke very well. I know that she's a delegate in her own right here, Comrade Jamela. I don't know who spoke, but I hear that the message was good. And our international delegates from our fraternal parties, especially those from overseas, who managed to travel for this from Swaziland Youth Congress. I want to mention them especially because they are currently at the cold face of a major struggle of possibility for a transition in Swaziland. That will require the SACP's critical role and the Young Communist League's critical role and the role of our and for us to fail towards democracy. And I think to see young cadres from Swaziland. It's very encouraging. We've got a leader here who was introduced yesterday as the representative of the Communist Party of Swaziland Youth Movement and Youth and Student Movement. 12 years ago, he has been in exile here in South Africa. We assimilated him in the Communist Party. One of our contributions to the Swazi Revolution is to give them back Comrade Pius. We trained him in every way possible, whom are tired for that revolution, who we just buried a few months ago after he got stroke because of ill treatment in Mswati's jails and was ultimately released and to only die within this introduction. I want us to observe a moment of silence for two comrades who have lost recently. They are still to be buried this weekend. They are staff members of the SACP. Comrade Mildred, master of the SACP at headquarters. She passed on Saturday night, or Friday night. We came to know Saturday morning. And Comrade Georgina, who was our district organizer for Upper Pasha district, on Sunday night. As we were going to Millie's house to pay our tribute and to express our condolences to the family, we then got the sad news about the passing on of Comrade Georgina. If we may stand and give them an honor of a moment of silence. Amandla! Thank you very much, comrades. May their undying spirit live on. Now, comrades, let me then start by thanking National Secretary and National Chairperson, respectively, who have carried on the baton of leadership to this important Congress and are concluding a handover process to the new leadership, and for having led our Young Communist League and never destroyed it, and including the novel COVID-19 crisis. And we must say, we are happy you did very well. You also had the privilege to lead our Young Communist League to its centenary for youth mobilization and national liberation and for socialism in our centenary milestone as the Young Communist League. And to thank the two comrades also for doing well. We are bidding them farewell as ex-officio members of the Young Communist League. In the three of your office bearers, including Comrade Dibulele, the DNS, are now directly elected members of our Central Committee. So we have a rejuvenated Central Committee. So they will join us full time. Forget the link with this youth movement, like other leaders who did not forget. We think your centenary, comrades, comes at a great time when important political developments are taking place in our country and the world, but we should activate and realize your intentions as the socialist youth movement. You must bask in the glory of your centenary, because this centenary will never happen again in your lifetime for as long as 200 years minimum. So it will, it will take away the diseases from human beings. So the possibility to live up to 200 years, it's now possible, but centenary as the Young Communist League. And party as we enjoy this centenary. Celebrate. And I'm told last night you had good celebrations. Comrade Laudi was briefing me that there was nice poetry sessions. Manax, you love these sessions of poetry. I don't know, it's within our youth and our youth movement. I always say myself that, you know, the youth that doesn't party will never win a revolution nor mobilize support amongst the youth. But you cannot have a dull and a moribund youth movement. Life in jail. No, it can't be like that. Young people must be alive. revolutionary youth celebration. They are different from some of the youth in the manner that they sometimes celebrate. But we must enter every sphere of celebration as the youth, every sphere of the arts, in every way possible. This is the space for the Young Communist League. The workers of our country are still facing serious difficulties. They are attacked left, right, and center by big capital, which denies them of their basic rights, exploits them unabatedly. Unfortunately, particularly public service workers, who continue to this day in their efforts to improve their working conditions and collective bargaining. We've seen government reneging from collective bargaining agreements with workers for the workers and their struggles, who are now embarking on pickets across the country. We want to urge our Young Communist League to join these pickets. And these pickets will culminate in the Workers' Second National Day of Action during this bargaining round. Most of the workers are our primary struggles. We must be more associated with the workers' struggles as the Young Communist League. And we must also commend the public service unions and their strategic posture towards unity of the working class in our country, especially organized workers. We want to take this opportunity to reiterate our call for these unions to convene a joint consultative conference to discuss broadly the conditions of the workers. We will join both the wider trade union consultative conference and the joint program of action that may arise out of these engagements. And in the same vein, we call on our workers and other trade unions across the economy to unite. Unity is the neoliberal policy trajectory in our country, and come up with a new policy content and direction, including in this National Congress. The Young Communist League must debate the new trajectory of economic development, and the financial oligarchs will prevail. And as we know, in their prevailing, they curtail or cut short the income share of workers, leaving many of our people and workers unemployed, and are taking completely the working class by these big bosses and capital imposing retrenchments. And I think, you know, if you look into the international behavior of capital today and how local capital remains the copycat of what is happening internationally, it's staggering. Some of the big companies in the world have been announcing retrenchments for workers. When they talk percentages, these are companies that employs over 200,000 workers worldwide. When they are talking few percentages, we must know the number of workers who are going to lose their jobs. But majority of them are in developed countries. Now, those in developing countries, where we still have more challenges to build and construct a new society, we must fight against retrenchments as the Young Communist League, and therefore join worker struggles in this regard. We must also, comrade, indicate that Comrade Mike, as well as Comrade Buti, they spoke greatly, and I must also congratulate Buti, who spoke on double capacity as Deputy Minister in Higher Education, Training, Science and Technology. And he spoke very well, articulating them the highest rate of unemployment amongst young people, particularly amongst the African youth, which almost reaches 70%. This, comrades, it's unacceptable. There's nowhere in the world where a national leadership of a society, of a country, can accept such. Why are you so docile? Accept these conditions and just read statistics. Why should we accept these conditions as the Young Communist League? We have launched programs after programs on employment creation. Yet, it's a drop in the ocean what governments try. The bottom line is, no single country can accept this nonsense in its own borders. Go and read today, despite the recent outcomes of COVID-19, which wreaked havoc across economies in the world. Go and read unemployment statistics of the USA and European countries. You are lucky to find any one of them percent unemployment rate if you use the unexpanded definition, and we must always use the expanded definition because this is of people who have just given up to look for jobs, which statistics always don't refer to. They are almost at 43% in our country, and amongst African youth at over 70%. Then there's this category of youth, employment, education, or training. It's a serious crisis. Now, this should be one major national crisis that we face as a country, and we must find solution to tackle it. Now, because you don't want to talk about it, I don't know why, as the youth movement in this country, because I see sometimes you are getting deviated broadly as the youth, not just the Young Communist League. It's a section or a strata of society. Now, this strata of society may belong to different classes according to where they are born. If you get born into a very rich family, you may be a young person, that strata of society, but you know you'll never be poor. Some will have what we call legacy wealth. This trend society, to live, human society has to produce. To produce, human society uses what we call labor power, the power of every single human being. Every single human being has got embedded labor power. This is what the capitalists then appropriate. Now, in Marxism, this labor power is the most important wealth of human society. Most important wealth of human society. So society, human beings have inherited nature. Beyond nature, this is the most important wealth in society. Every single day is not being protected. You are not even fighting to protect this massive wealth of society. Because capitalism has deviated the focus. You now believe that the important wealth of society is money. Money is nothing. Money is product of human beings. It's created by labor itself. It's a product of human labor. Protect the value of labor. This is the basis also why we relate with the trade union movement. We don't relate with the trade union movement because Comrade Mike is friendly to me. We can organize coffee from time to time as a leader of the federation. No, precisely because he is leading the most important wealth of our society. The wealth in which all development rests in it. But this wealth, we have allowed it to be. We have to stop this, comrades. We have to take power as the working class. This is critical for us because when we have taken power as the working class, it's as simple as waking up in the morning and taking care of yourself, taking a bath. Do you know that bathing yourself is work? But because you are bathing yourself, you have innated it. It's something that... This is what this power will mean to us. We'll be taking care of ourselves and our interest as a class. And we are the only conscious class that has the capacity to can take care of all of society. The bourgeoisie don't care about your well-being. They care about how much wealth they make. So we have to change things. Now, the youth as the most agile, the most active, the most powerful wealth of human labor is embedded in the youth category. In other words, in all workers, but especially amongst the youth. Because naturally, you are still more energetic, more active. You have not yet got tired. And of course, so that young people must come in. All workers must enjoy work. We must liberate workers from exploitation. Liberate yourself from capital. Don't attack other workers who are at work. How are they going to look after their children? That's the most selfish action. Now, we can't have the youth that is mobilized to be anti-working class. We must fight for you to have jobs and to have work. That's why we've launched our Red October campaign on work, land, and food. We must fight for you to have work, not to destroy and remove. Who's going to look after them? Because this capitalist bourgeois government is not going to look after them. They must work to look after their children and to look after you. Most of you are children of these workers who are struggling. It can't work like that. In any case, as human beings, after leaving this category of the youth category, in any case, myself, we have debated this with, and this is not to impose in any of your discussion. One comrade spoke to me, said, no, this debate is not good. And basically this comrade was saying, don't enter this debate. But my own belief is that ultimately, the youth category must be up to the age of 25. Ultimately, in the future, I'm not saying now, it will evolve in debate. But ultimately, between the days when I was a youth and the days when I'm not a youth, the days when I was practically a young person in the Youth Congress, we used to have a slogan in our unit, Comrade Dallas. We used to say we've adopted some youth from Europe or the US, but the rock group, the bands, the music band, the instrumentation. Okay, this youth, they adopted a slogan, the rock artists, that they live young, die fast, they live fast, die young, and live a good-looking corpse. So we took this posture in our confrontation with the apartheid regime. So when I knew I could die anytime, but I left no responsibility behind, except the pain of my parent. And I used to discuss this thing with them. My father, for instance, was totally opposed to me involved in the struggle. He said, no, we are playing games with the apartheid regime. It's too powerful for us. Except that after I disappeared and he didn't know where I was, he used to defiantly wear the UDF t-shirt. Now they can't even account for his son. So we had no responsibility. So we could take major risks. Now I'm just thinking in the context of where society is under democratic dispensation, whether we should retain this age limit at this level for the youth of our country. Whether this is defined by the United Nations or whatever categories. I mean, families. I remember when we left the country, one of my dear friends and comrades, Bafana Baloyi, unfortunately he died when we were outside. Bafana, before we left, after we had a final meeting to leave, to arrange how to travel and stuff, how to leave the country, Bafana comes up and says, hey, Madod, it's not going to be possible, man, to be picked up before we leave. But somehow when we were going, we found that the place was not properly arranged. So we went to sleep back to our families. Then Bafana decided to go and see his girlfriend. When he arrives there, the girlfriend says, I'm pregnant. And he comes back and says, hey guys, that's the point. In our communities, teenage pregnancies, I mean to say at the time, particularly among in school, he was not a teenager as Bafana in this instance. And we said, you cannot leave your girlfriend pregnant. Who's going to take care of the child? You have to remain. That's how Bafana remained. And this, as you know, troubled me very much because I'm the first amongst our comrades in the township to see a newspaper that we felt bad about it. But we took important social responsibility that you can't leave your girlfriend when she's pregnant. It will be irresponsible. But we had no other responsibilities. Now, it is important, comrade, that we debate these questions openly as young people about the youth age. But there are so many issues, conference of the ANC, where we expect young people to raise their issues there as well, because the ANC is leading our movement in government. So the statistics about unemployment, for instance, I'm not going to read about them. Comrade Mike and Comrade Booty spoke about them eloquently. Safe to say, let's appreciate that unemployment in this country it's a direct result to this national conference of the ANC, must have a clear message from the working class that they must not go there to just become a voting fodder. They must go there and change policy content of the movement, policy direction on the economy, on the youth, on employment of the youth, and employment creation in our country as a whole. They must go there. They must be very clear. These policies have failed the people of our country, have failed the youth of our country. There's no reason why we should return these policies. In this regard, we must be clear to the delegates who are going to this conference that they must call the ANC not only to throw away neoliberal economic policies, but to also state capture comrades have not only ravaged the government and the ANC and our people, it has messed up in the main the living conditions of the working class. Therefore, the way forward in this regard will lie in adopting radical national democratic revolutionary measures to advance as rapidly as possible the realization of coming in. Must be told with no uncertain terms that we need a clear policy change in content, not to be repeated with same content, only they change the bottle or the color of the bottle, the content is the same. We want radical change of this failure of policy in our government. And in this way, only we believe this radical IMF and the World Bank and the OECD countries, that we can have policy sovereignty as a country, take decisions about what concerns us in a country because of our own obtaining material condition of the people, not what the IMF and the World Bank want. It's important, my comrade, in our regard as the Communist Party. For every speaker there, myself included, starting here, is going to talk about this mantra of problems afflicting our society: poverty, unemployment, and inequality. It's like it's a song. Now we have innated it. We do not know that when we talk about poverty, we're talking about human suffering, starvation, malnutrition, people living in squatter camps. There's a small booklet, I think, produced by Jacana Press, comrade Jenny, that I've been reading. It's written by Professor Colin Bundy on poverty. An amazing articulation of this question. Of course, it's a progressive writer. He's writing it in different forms, but it's in poverty, it's lack of just one thing, employment or good salary. It's deeper than that for South African masses. If you live in these undignified places in the squatter camps, where our people are subjected to myriad of problems, you are living in poverty. Now, we talk about this and say poverty and leave it there. Talk about the statistics, the people, and the statistics must refer to the individual, the person who is suffering. So we're talking about the numbers of people who are suffering. So our policy dimension and posture must radically change. We're talking about people here. We're not just talking about numbers, mathematical, on a daily basis. They are going to repeat all of these things. But they will not say, this is the tangible program, effective program to reverse this condition. They are going to give you broad frameworks of things that mean nothing, that takes years to interpret for implementation. That is why we require the working class leadership of the redistribution of wealth in our society, where on the one hand, a myriad of 1%ers in our society are carrying 80% of the wealth of society. They are not even prepared to share with it. I'll talk briefly about this question when towards my conclusion, when I talk about the transition being spitted upon, including by this judicial ruling on Janus Walus. Because that ruling doesn't respect the sacrifice of this country. Actually, we have entered a new transitional period. The transitional period from 1994 to now, or since the death of Comrade Krizan, his death unleashed a new sea of reconciliation. That policy has exhausted itself. What does this mean when we say this policy has exhausted itself? It doesn't mean we're not committed to building a new society, a non-racial society. We are looking at the compromises of the fundamentals that were who represented the ruling class in this country. We believe that the goodwill of the ruling class will simply change when there's democratic transition. And that is why the Communist Party characterized 1994 not as freedom, but as a period, as a democratic breakthrough, because it allowed us to take the levers of state power to unleash democratic transition that we made in this transition. We tried our best. Amongst those best in the transition was the fact that we ended a war from the apartheid machinery and its ruling class against our people. Our people were dying on a daily basis. In this region, hundreds of people were dying every single day in this area. This was the last frontier, Ekurhuleni, the last frontier towards 1994 for the peace that we enjoy today. That is why when the court, the Constitutional Court and the justices of our country take themselves out of our country, we don't know who they represent, of oppression, not an instrument to adjudicate social problems, to be the final arbiters. We believe that this aspect we have been taken for a ride or for granted as a people. Very hard. Many other parts of the country, different places in KwaZulu-Natal, were the front line, where the impies, organized impies, colluding with the apartheid regime, will attack our people willy-nilly, kill hundreds of people every single day, every single regime, with these impies that were killing our people in the townships. And in other parts, as long as you belong to the liberation movement. So we paid heavily for this transition, but we made major compromises. Amongst these compromises, of course, was this thing that we will democratize. And we came with illusionary program expansion. Let's expand this BEE. Now it was called Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Programs. But our conception was that we needed communities to play a role in these BEE programs, in engaging with capital. We have always been outmaneuvered by capital in this regard, the ruling class. The real ruling class of society is capital, it's not government. Only, including here, to think that, truly speaking, our government is in charge is not to understand politics. We are not in charge. It's the ruling class that is in charge, the bourgeoisie, the capitalists. These are the people that are in charge. But they are in charge nicely. Yes, they are in charge nicely. They don't account. I can make a call and say, one parliamentarian, just call for meetings of ministers, between ministers and labor, or between ministers and communities, between ministers and capital. You will see who they meet the most. They meet big capital, not our people. And that's a problem, because big capital, in every strategic thing that government wants to do, they go there. And in some instances, these guys are so arrogant, they even tell them what to do. And when we have meek ministers and leaders in different government departments who do not understand political power and the authority that they have of the people, they just accede to the demands of the real ruling class. We are not in charge. I think that's the first thing that you must appreciate. Exercise political power in the same way we've been doing it over the last 3 decades. We need a working class to elevate itself, to literally direct the posture of the national democratic revolution. I've said it, and I must indicate I don't want to defy my leadership, because I'm elected. No, pal. The way you are coming out sometimes, you seem to have taken sides in the political space, in the movement. And I accepted that. I realized myself that maybe they are right. Because in some instances I have said, and I want to repeat this, I won't go beyond it, I have said, among the presidential candidates in the ANC, because before they were whittled, I said none of them have condemned neoliberal economic policies and trajectory in this country and whether they will bring in a new people's economy when they take power. As leaders of the ANC, none of them, none of those presidential candidates have said so. And I went on and on. For instance, none of them have articulated the concept of the renewal that Comrade Mike Shingang was talking about very well. Slogans. None of them have articulated the reconfiguration of the alliance in content, despite that the alliance has produced a document that gives content to this renewal. I mean, to the reconfiguration of the alliance. They are not talking about that. So it's quite clear, post, let's say January next year, with candidate, we said as a Communist Party, let the left, the working class, contest the ANC unashamedly. Both inside and outside. Yes, both inside and outside. Let's contest the African National Congress unashamedly as a class. Some of them, they can tell you that, no, leave those ones in the alliance, they will speak. But look at the policy outcomes. The policy outcome will be the outcomes of the bourgeoisie. So it doesn't matter who you elect. If the policy outcome is that of the bourgeoisie, who constitute the ANC, if the ANC members do not understand the policy trajectory that this country needs to take? Where do this come from? These townships that are now dilapidating. Our people are living in squalor conditions with flowing sewages all over. I mean, it's just unbelievable. When we were in Khochimampuru, oh, how dirty the city of Tshwane has become, particularly in the taxi ranks which are used by the African majority. Sewage flowing all over, rats on the streets. And that coalition led by the DA, interest of the elites who have arranged positions amongst themselves and benefits. We must tackle that as the Communist Party. Our people deserve services, proper services in every municipality. Our people must not send piles of litter on the streets. In my own township in Thokoza, they are not collecting refuse. What is this? It doesn't start now. They repeat it. So we have to fight consequences because of policy failures and our own misrule in many instances. Last 2 pointers, comrades. The issue of Janus Walus. This criminal assassin who killed all by government, he has been released yesterday. And the minister, in a short statement, said something so profound, so important, and they failed to do it. Because he explained in simpler terms what this means to us. I felt represented by Comrade Lamula. We must thank him for such a statement. Just implementing a court decision. Unfortunate in this instance. But our justices must reconnect the law with the people. The law is not an instrument outside of society. It's a product of society. In other words, a capitalist economy will determine even elitism, the way capitalism is organized, elitism in law, in education, in arts, in culture, in every other thing, even in gender relations. It will represent the base of that society, which is the economic base. Don't bring ideologies here. Society is ideological throughout. Yes, society is a battle of ideologies throughout. It will never change this one. Whoever says this to you, you must know how miseducated they are. Sometimes I feel ashamed, even by very senior comrades, saying these things in public. So fight. Now, we must express, comrades, our complete disappointment with the release of Janus Walus on parole. We have opposed this, as you know. We have taken up issues. We have launched a 135 days program of action that I must say to you was Siyabonga Nopani. This was your parting shot in the Young Communist League. Of course, this program was a program of the Communist Party, but we mandated him to work out this program, and he developed a wonderful program, which is now a program of the Alliance. This program will take us to the Central Committee has given an instruction on this. All provinces of the Communist Party must embark on reviving the living legacy of Comrade Chris Hani. All provinces. So we're going to embark on national campaigns. So we're not going to allow Chris Hani to be killed again in our presence. That can never happen. That was the commander of our People's Army, Umkhonto weSizwe, and a leader of our movement in his own right, and General Secretary of our Communist Party. So that program will continue. We will intend for rescission order. Once they give us the dates, we need to go there in our numbers, particularly the comrades from Gauteng, to support Ausdimpo and the Hani family and the Communist Party leadership when they are going to present this case. But also, in this quest on the death of Comrade Chris Hani, this program was started by the Young Communist League, Comrade Buti Manamela, when he was in the leadership. It has not yet been done. We have said we will not be deterred ourselves to keep the who remained unremorseful has been released by our courts without showing any sympathy to us. And this is very serious for us, that the courts can show sympathy and find embarrassing, actually, extremely embarrassing. And this, I say, is how best I can contain myself. Our justices must, and sometimes when you are angry, you know, I looked at Comrade Panyaza. I refused to do those interviews yesterday. And I looked at Comrade Panyaza when he was responding on this thing. We have characterized him as our volunteer-in-chief on this campaign here in Gauteng. We have always said, we must avoid our leaders talking to the people angry. He contained himself. I saw him almost about to cry. This is bad for us. Has finally happened. Maybe it has waken us up. We were too much asleep. We have given in too much and got nothing in return. As the oppressed of this country, big capital, the ruling class, must feel us. They must know we are here. Chris Hani will never die in our presence. So we are calling for an inquest on his death so that we can find the truth. The same way we are calling for the inquest on all other victims of apartheid regime. We honored Noctula Similan at our Special National Congress. After the family then said, they have accepted after waiting for decades to accept that she's no more, even though they don't know where she is. The traces we have is that she was captured by the apartheid forces. They don't want to talk about what they did to her. We believed in that way, some of us, but our people believe that, and their families need to find closure. So we want an inquest on her. We want an inquest on the Cradock Four. Those families today still do not know what happened to their loved ones. Because when those comrades died, Comrades Celo Mhlauli, Sparrow Mkhonto, Matthew Koniwe, and Fort Kalata, when the four of them were buried, during their funeral, 1985, Cradock. We must never forget Cradock. Cradock is a monument of communism in this country. That is why, even when we are adopting part of our village development system and strategy, we know represent something extremely important in the history of the Communist Party. Not only did Comrade Moses Kotane went to stay in Cradock after he had some difficulties here in Johannesburg, and also wrote some important articles about indigenous. The funeral of the Cradock Four led to the revealing of this party flag. Some of the people that participated in that flag are still alive. They know where it is buried. It's still buried. We need a proper ceremony to unveil that flag. And Peter introduced state of emergency. Because now the people have defied the apartheid regime and all its forces openly. So Cradock remains important for us. It's a monument for the Communist Party. And therefore we must find the truth. Because their children and grandchildren have never lived in peace. They have seen a democratic transition unfolding and thought something, at least truth will come out. They will know something about what happened to their families. We don't seem to be conscious of apartheid crimes, including the grouping that have launched a campaign for reparations of the victims of violence, particularly victims of apartheid, the Kuluman Support Group and others. They may have raised it in the manner that sometimes the movement didn't like. But we must go to the constitute, and a democratic government doesn't care about them. In fact, when we went to meet with them at the Constitutional Court, we found that their demands are so minuscule. It's not even what can break the bank in this country. One province can be mandated to pay the demand that they put together. It's symbolic. It's not worth of life. It's just symbolic. Something small to your wives and everyone who participated, uncles and everybody, aunts and so forth, all of them contributed to the liberation that we enjoy today. And in that regard, we can do something as a democratic government, just as a sense of we appreciate. But we have looked the other way around. So we must bring back the focus of our revolution. The last key point, comrade, I want to talk to, the main task of the youth can be defined. We have spoken about how the youth is not a class. Comrade National Secretary spoke about this thing. The youth is a strata of society, it's a section of society, it's not a class. Its members can belong to any of the classes. True revolutions are... 1994 was a compromise. We didn't defeat the ruling class in this country. They negotiated core power. And within a few years, they took back the leadership of power. And it took us almost 2 years. Then they imposed gear on us. And the RDP, I was still in the camps at the time, and we were seeing the videos that were sent to us in the live debate towards 1994. And de Klerk kept on speaking, going there. Madiba said, no, Mr. de Klerk, where is your plan? Here is our plan. He was taking out the RDP document, our plan, the RDP document. That document had a major role in the development of the RDP and the entire alliance movement. 2 years down the line, after 1994-96, we closed the office. We had Comrade J. Naidu, General Secretary of COSATU, who was sent to Parliament. He was Minister of RDP, Minister of Reconstruction and Development Program. They underfunded the ministry. It closed the office after they imposed gear on us. Gear was a terrible policy failure in this country. It has reversed most of our achievement and gains as a democratic movement. There's no justification for that document in this country, the gear document. Now, comrades, fight within that class and give the class the impetus, the strength, the energy to fulfill its mission. That is why we need the youth within the revolutionary camp, within the working class camp, with your capacity, your agility, your untiredness. That's what we need. Now, in other words, the youth must, all critical leaders in the world showed themselves when they were young people. You must prove your point. I sometimes get so much, you know, when I was young, like you, sometimes some of you you mistaken me for being a young boy. I'm not a young boy. When I was young, like you, we had not, we were inspired by Che Guevara, by Fidel Castro. When they took power, they were very young. By Marx himself, when he wrote Capital, he was 28. Lumumba himself, Che, when he died, was less than 35. Che Guevara, this hero of the international working class. That's how successful that youth was in struggle. Now, the youth must align itself with the revolutionary forces, and sometimes when the revolutionary forces doesn't play ball, the youth must place a revolutionary agenda of the class forward and fulfill that mission of the class. The class will join it. So in other words, the youth have cohesive capacity, wants to be served. Comrades, the youth must take responsibility to serve society and to guarantee their future. That's your task. So you have a task as the most active strata in society, this most energetic human force in society. You mentioned on three occasions, you said even if the party doesn't agree. And I didn't understand, where does this thing come from? Even if the party doesn't agree on this, even if the party doesn't agree. And I'm like, is there a tension between the YCL and the SACP? And there's none. But you are raising real issues. The point is, I agree with you. You don't have to come to us and beg that we want to do 1, 2, 3. By the way, it's by the Young Communist League, under the leadership of Comrade Buti. He placed it on the table. And when we went to the National Special Congress in Durban, I think in, what year was that? 2005? Yes. When we went there, already now the Communist Party was placing this question on the agenda, because the Young Communist League had placed this point on the agenda of comrades, man. No. Let's try and do something. No. Let's do something about this thing. It has been too long. 18 years. You know, comrades, our leaders were in Robben Island. They used to say, because they were a captive group as prisoners, but they liberated themselves on the Robben Island, which is, we must learn from them. They used to say that, no, you know, they will debate one issue for 6 months. For instance, the Freedom Charter. You can't take those comrades from Robben Island on the pointers in the Freedom Charter. They will discuss one issue, the people shall govern, for 6 months. What you have said, they engage. They took time, but they understood that they were prisoners. They also needed to find something to fine-tune themselves to be ready for the revolution outside, so that when any one of them goes out, understood exactly what the people were saying when they were putting their demands about the fact that the people shall govern. Now, we are by capital, mercilessly. Why are we not taking a final decision in implementation? I'm going to come to this point as my main last point to say, firstly, you, the youth, must regain your revolutionary consciousness and participate on the side of the working class. That is why the most important, our front force, if we organize them consciously as the communist movement. We must also indicate, comrade, that when we chose democratic transformation of our society and embedded this transition on reconciliation as a national liberation movement, we did not, because of that, we did not fully implement what revolutionaries normally do when they take power. They say the first task of a revolutionary movement when it takes power is to dismantle the oppressive machinery of the bourgeoisie or the oppressors. That's the first task when you take power. In our case, Instead, as the years went by, we realized it was now becoming impossible because the ruling class had regained political authority and strategic control of our direction. We need now, first, to free ourselves from the ruling class in this country. By all means possible. Mulaudi spoke a little bit because you wanted to make your point. Don't do that. Make your point and indicate in the classical consideration this is where it fits. You don't have to denounce it. So he spoke about this question a little bit, about leadership in all of these things, having shares in big companies that are oppressing our people and so forth and so forth. So basically saying this is our new role in the transition. We must, and we lead that transition, particularly as the working class. And therefore, in doing all of this, we must therefore, as the youth wing of our ruling alliance, be more strategic about what we want to achieve and stop being patronized by leaders as the Young Communist League, as the PYA structures, the working class. If you assist me in serving the working class as the leader of the party, I will appreciate. That's what I want to do. I don't want any one of you to serve me. I don't even want
That position then. Send that picture. Ne?
This thing is taking the movement worldwide into something else.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can hear me from there.
The other day I was
I can. God bless you, Tembi. Hey, yes, yes. No, I'm alright, thanks. I'm alright. I'll be better if I know that my bites are there. 2 of them, yeah? Thank you.